Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. We are joining live together, First Choice, this morning, where we make the best first choice possible. Good morning, Dowd and Debbie and Evelyn. Good morning to you, everybody. So glad you're joining us today. Good morning, Danny. If you're in the chat, joining us this morning live, go ahead and say hello. I'll just go ahead and point out all my kids' drawings you may have seen the last couple days over right there. We got my son's rainbow, and there's someone, you can't see it great, but this yellow right here is a drawing of a face, and I think a mustache and eyebrows, and it's a little bit of hair right up there at the top. And so, good morning. I'm sure some of you have kids running around you this morning. Good morning, Bill, Melanie, Donald, Stacy. I don't know why I said it like that, Donald. Stacy, Jen, Jacqueline. Hey, it's going to be a great morning this morning today, everybody, as we're going with our web notes again today. It's I know it's normally flannel Friday, but today it's a flannel Thursday. And so, hey, we're going through the web notes this morning, watersedgechurch.net/web notes. We are on part 2 of the KISS series called Who's First, and we are going through day 4 today. Remember, First Choice is all about helping you make the best first choice possible in the morning, starting your day off right. And because we know when we start our day off right, we start our day off focusing on God and putting God on the throne of our heart, putting Jesus on the throne of our heart. It helps us throughout the rest of our day. It really sets us up for the best day possible, and really it puts all our problems into perspective, right? It really sets us up to have the best day possible, and for and for us to just be ready for the day. We're going to be in 1 Corinthians 11 this morning. I think I have a typo in the verse we're going through today. It's 11:1, not 1:11, but we're in 1 Corinthians 11:1. It's a lot of ones. You can understand how I messed that up, but 1 Corinthians 11:1 is where we'll be at. Is Paul's words to the Corinthians. But we'll get there in a minute, but I wanted to give you a heads up. Let's see it. I'm going to interact give me 1 second in the chat here. Jen Thompson, this is sad weather. It was like a spring teaser Tuesday. It really was. It was like 64 where I was at. And then I just got a notification from one of my weather apps called My Radar that said heavy snow starting in 5 minutes. I was like, what in the world? I didn't even realize it was even possible this morning. But I looked outside and there's ice all over my car. And I don't know where you're joining us from this morning. That'd be a fun thing. Throw the weather out, where you're joining us, what the temperature is outside right now. We'll be able to see where everybody's at this morning. I'd love to see what's going on where you guys are at, just to kind of get an idea. But it's freezing here. It's actually freezing. There's ice all over. I could see one of our cars this morning, and apparently snow is going to start. I'm going to keep checking outside to let you know if that's happening, but I don't think it is. And it says 34 here on my little thermostat I have outside, and so I'm going to doubt that it's actually going to snow. But who knows? Who knows? Crazier things have happened, like a 63-degree day earlier this week. Anyways, okay, let's jump in. Day 4 of the web notes. Day 4. The principle of you first is a daily decision to make about yourself. In agreement, we are to take up our cross daily and follow Jesus daily. Jesus knocked on the door of your heart, and you let him in. Now he lives in you all the days of your life. Christ is alive in you, and Christ is in you. And the Christ in you is not selfish. It's not selfish. When we take up our cross and follow Christ, we die to ourselves. We die to self, and when that happens, there's no room in our hearts for selfishness. It doesn't just happen. It doesn't happen. That we can't have selfishness in our hearts when we die to ourselves. And I just want to point out that daily, the principle of you first is a daily decision, just like we daily take up our cross and follow Jesus. I think when we pray that prayer, the Lord's Prayer, it starts, doesn't start there. At some point, there's the line that says, give us this day our daily bread. Give us this day our daily bread. I think so often, and this is not true for almost everybody joining us this morning. You guys are on every single morning, it seems. But so many of us sometimes, man, we actually pray the prayer. Instead of give us this day our daily bread, we actually pray, give us this day our monthly bread. Because that's the amount of times we go to God during the month. We might go one time to God during the month and expect us to carry it all through the week. Or here's a bigger one. Here's a bigger one. We say, give us this day our weekly bread, and we go to church, and that's it for the week. That's our only time we actually spend with God during the day, is on Sunday mornings when Pastor Stu's feeding us, and we're getting the spiritual milk then. But that's not the only time we should be following God. It says daily follow God, and so joining the first choice is so important for this aspect as well. Is that you've got to daily decide to take up your cross and follow him. Follow him. Okay. Let's continue in 1 Corinthians 11:1. 1 Corinthians 11:1. 32 in Yorktown, 28 in Maryland, 32 in Hayes, Newport News 31. Excuse me, Stacey? I don't need to hear that 67 degrees in Jax Beach, Florida. I didn't need to hear that, honestly. I know I asked for it, but now that's too much. That's great. That's great. Good for you, Stacy. If you could bring up some of that for us, we would highly appreciate that. Okay. 1 Corinthians 11:1. Again, I'm in my study Bible. We're gonna do a little jumping around. I know there's only one verse listed in the web notes for today. However, we're gonna do a throwback. We're gonna follow along with the study notes in my Bible, and then we'll finish our time together. 1 Corinthians 11:1, and I'm going to back it up even further. It's odd in the Bible. I'm going to show you what this looks like in my Bible, so you can see how interesting this is. So if you see right here, hopefully it's in focus for you. You see how 11 kind of begins in the end of chapter 10. So it actually says whatever verse ends up here in chapter 10. And then it goes into verse 11. And then there's a new chapter heading, and it goes into verse 2 right here. And so what that means is they probably had trouble figuring out where exactly Hebrews or 1 Corinthians 11:1 started, like where that chapter heading actually should be, or where the chapter restart should be. And so what they think is that, what it seems is that 1 Corinthians 11:1 is actually part of the paragraph before it. And so I'm going to read that for you. I'm going to read that for you as well this morning. And so why do I keep wanting to say Hebrews? We're in 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians 10, we're going to start at verse 31. And it's talking about the believer's freedom before that. But it's saying, so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. Do not cause anyone to stumble, whether Jews, Greeks, or the church of God, even as I try to please everybody in every way. For I am not seeking my own good, but the good of many, so that they may be saved. Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. Oh, my mom's joining on YouTube. She says, good morning, honey. Morning, Ma. Love you. So in 1 Corinthians 10, it links right into that. And actually the verse they quote for in the web notes is a different translation, which is awesome. I'm going to help you do that in a minute, but it says, be imitators of me as I am of Christ. Be imitators of me as I am of Christ. And Pastor Stu actually showed this yesterday. I pretty regularly go from translation to translation. And so that's not new, but I didn't know that you could do this part of it. When you highlight a verse, for example, if you were to highlight 1 Corinthians 11 verse 1 in the YouVersion app, 1 Corinthians 11:1 in the YouVersion app, and then you were to hit there's share, there's the image, you can highlight it, you can pray over, you can bookmark it, whatever. There's also a compare button. So if you hit that compare button, it'll actually show you all the translations that you have. And I didn't know this, that you could actually see them side by side in the app. And so that was really exciting for me. And so I'm looking at the different versions here. And remember how I said they kind of have a hard time putting that verse where it should go. It should go in 11 or should go in 10. And so actually in the NLT here, when it compares version, it's not even there because they attribute it to chapter 10. But anyways, NIV says, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. ESV says, be imitators of me as I am of Christ. The Message, which is a transliteration, it takes the phrases and puts them into common language. It says this: it pleases me that you continue to remember and honor me by keeping up the traditions of faith I taught you. All actual authority stems from Christ. The Passion Translation: I want you to pattern your lives after me. I want you to pattern your lives after me, just as I pattern mine after Christ. Imitate me just as I imitate Christ. Be imitators of me just as I also am of Christ. Imitate me just as I also imitate Christ. So it's a great way to get a different words. So for instance, if you don't like the word example, if that doesn't do it for you, you can switch. And in the Passion Translation, it says pattern your lives, or be imitators of me. And so whatever you're looking at there, you may get a little different thing out of each translation. But 1 Corinthians 11:1, be imitators of me as I am of Christ. In my NIV Study Bible notes, looking at 11:1, notice the order. It says, notice the order. Christ is the supreme example, right? Christ is the all-time supreme example. And then get this. Number 2, Christ's apostle, aka Paul, follows that example. Right? Paul follows Christ's example. And then it says, number 3, we are to follow the apostles' example, which is also Christ's example, right? We're to follow those examples. Jen Thompson, I wish a Leviticus came with Passion Translation. That's right, Jen. I totally agree with you. Maybe they'll get there one day. I know they have Psalms and maybe Proverbs in the Old Testament, but yeah. Okay, 1 Corinthians 11:1. It also says, go look at 1 Peter 2:21. So we're going to do that real quick. Talking about verse 11:1. Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. It says, go look at 2 Peter 2:21. And it says this: to this you were called because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps. I'm going to read the study note on this one, and then this may fire some of you up and may rub you the wrong way, but I think that's great. I think that's where learning can begin, right? When we get rubbed a little the wrong way, when we get maybe convicted of something, or we get fired up about something, I think that can open the door for us to learn a little more. I'm going to read the verse again, then I'll read the study note. To this you were called because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example. There's our word, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps. All right, and talking about to this you were called, the patient endurance of injustice is part of God's plan for the Christian. Wow. The patient endurance of injustice is part of God's plan for the Christian. It was an important feature of the true grace of God experienced by the readers. And then talking about Christ suffered for you. Christ is the supreme example of suffering evil for doing good. His experience as the suffering servant savior transforms the suffering of his followers from misery into privilege. From misery into privilege. When we put others first, just like Christ does, just like his example, it can help us better live like Christ. Make the daily decision to die to self and let Christ live in you by following his example. We just got to follow example. We got to follow the example of putting others first. And I think in general, I think I'm a selfless person, but man, yesterday I was even just going through and thinking about what, I was talking to my wife and I was about to say something and then quickly you first came to mind and I changed up everything that I said. And that's funny because I think of myself as a selfless person, right? Like I think of myself as that, but then when you actually tell yourself, nope, 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 you first, you first, you first, not me, you first, right? It totally changes what you're going to say in the moment. So hey, if you want to read a little bit more about that in First Peter, that was First Peter 2:21. I think if you want to read more, First Peter 13, starting there, First Peter 2:13, sorry, First Peter 2:13 was great, and then Second Corinthians chapter 11 is a great place to be reading as well. Let me go ahead and pray for you, and we'll continue about our day, having started off on the best foot forward possible. God, thank you for this day. God, thank you for the weather. God, thank you for the weather here, for the weather, beautiful weather in Florida. God, I pray that just today everyone's safe. If it's icy where they're at, God, pray that they hydrate if it's hot where they're at. And God, I pray that you just help us put you first. God, help us in every communication today, even the very next communication we have today, God. Help us think you first. Just take a pause beforehand. Help us take you first and ask ourselves, how would I, what next message would my spouse like to receive from me? What next message would my friend or my kids like to receive from me, instead of me scolding, or instead of me being frustrated or impatient, or saying me first, being selfish? God, what next message would they love to receive, God? And let us put that into action with every conversation we're having today, God, that just says you first, you first, you first, you first. God, bring that to mind countless times today and over the weeks to come. I praise all in your name. Amen. Alrighty, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back one more day tomorrow. It's Friday, and maybe I'll choose a new flannel for Flannel Friday tomorrow, everybody. Friday, fun day. Can't wait to see you in the morning, 7:30 a.m., and we will see you